Hello everybody, welcome to my first ever studio vlog. My name's Tara and I'm an artist and maker based in Bedfordshire. Today I'm actually working on a custom needle felted pet. This particular one is a Jack Russell and I'm going to show you a little bit of the process. Not too much and not too little either, so hopefully if you are a needle felter yourself you can pick up a few hints and tricks from me. So the first thing I do is gather all the tools I need. I find it's much easier when I have everything to hand rather than scattered around my desk and in drawers and things like that. And that way I can just crack on with my work rather than trying to find things. So you can see me here failing to open my box of eyes, and I have quite a wide variety of eyes, everything from little tiny eyes from stalks, which you'll see me getting out in a second, to even taxidermy eyes for my larger sculptures. Also you can see I've got some buckles, but I'll be using those much later on in the video. So you can see those little eyes, they're a really good size for quite small sculptures and that's why I really like them. These are from a company called Sweet Pea Dolls, so you can find online, and they're really good and in a variety of different colours. And here I have my box of noses, beaks and jaws and other wonderful things. So I do have a large selection of pre-made noses that I've made myself from oven clay like Fimo. That way I can shape it perfectly to match the dog, or in this case just find one that suits really well. So the base of my sculptures always start with an armature, which is made out of craft wire. It's quite flexible but at the same time pretty firm, and that way I know I've got the strength for my sculpture. Lots of people use things like pipe cleaners, but I never find they work particularly well because it's just so flimsy. So this wire gives me the perfect structure for sculptures and helps them to stand or sit or whatever it is, whatever position I want them to be in. So I cut 3 pieces, one for the spine, one for the front and one for the back. You can see how I folded the legs over so you get 2 legs out of 1 piece of wire. Then what I do is clamp it tightly around the spine and twist to kind of secure in place, and then I can start adding different shapes to make it more anatomically correct, which you'll see me doing in just a second. And once I've got my structure all sort of in place, I actually trim the wires down. Believe you me, it makes it much easier when you're felting, and you can see me here totally failing to try and cut 2 legs at once. Note to self, it doesn't work, one at a time. Another really important thing is to make sure you check your sculpture to see if it actually sits, stands, whatever position you want it to be in is correct. Otherwise you'll have a lot more trouble going down the road felting this. So now we can actually start to felt. So I make the core of my sculpture, so the innards, out of something called carded wool, and this particular type of wool is Corriedale. So it's a really good matted kind of wool, really good base, and it felts really easily and really tightly. So I've taken about a 30cm piece here, which I've split into what I call slivers. And with each of those slivers, I start wrapping it around each wire. So you can see what I'm doing there. And when I get to the end, you'll see I use my pliers to clamp the end of the wire back into place, and that secures the wool. And then you'll see me wrapping all the way back up to the top. And then once that's there, I start felting it into place. I do this for all of the little legs, apart from the neck. And the reason I don't do the neck is we'll attach the head to there, and if there's too much bulk, we're going to really struggle. So felt everything together except for the neck. And now we can start on the head. So I've taken another piece of Corriedale wool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it tightly up into a cylinder shape. And once I've got a nice cylinder shape, I'll start using my felting tool to go back in and start felting this really tightly. So if you leave this too loose, you're going to lose all of your structure of your face shape. And obviously for dogs as well as other animals, a lot of the character is in the face. So it's really important that you spend probably the most amount of time on this piece. So as I start to get a more tighter cylinder, I'll start working more at one end to kind of start refining the muzzle and other facial features. It won't look like a huge amount at the moment, but trust me, keep going with it and eventually it will start looking more and more animal shaped. Now, the other thing I do is I do go in with scissors, and this is basically to remove some bulk that isn't needed, which you can't always take away with a needle. So don't be frightened, just go in, trim, and then shape again with your needle. So now I'm going to pop in my eyes, my little eyes on stalks, and I use an awl to do this. You often find with felting that big structures like this are actually really hard to make a hole into, and the felt almost knots itself back together with all those fibres. So by using an awl, you make sure you've got a really sturdy shape there to put the eyes in and to secure them in place. And then once I'm happy, as you can see here, I'll pop the eyes in, check again, and I'll glue them into place. So I normally use a really strong glue like E6000. Before I add any sort of nose, depending on the dog of course, you'll often find that they have a lot of dark coloration around their muzzle area. So before I stick my nose on, I always make sure I go in with at least a little bit of colour to make sure that when I stick the nose on, I have a base ready to go. You often find once you've glued something, it's really hard to felt around. So by doing this first, you save yourself some stress further down the line. And now finally we can start adding some colour. Now I never go in all guns blazing with this. I actually take really wispy pieces of coloured wool to start almost sketching in where I'm going to put the markings. That way I can keep referring back to photos and it saves me, again, a lot of stress, which seems to happen a lot when you're making sculptures. So you can see here that little sketch I've done just around the eye and to the back of the head. Once I'm happy with that, I can start filling it in. Now, not only am I adding colour, but with this sort of coloured wool, I'm also starting to build some muscle tone. If you keep it flat with nothing going on, it really doesn't look realistic, and obviously we're aiming for as real as possible. So you can start bulking out with some different colours. I'm really sorry if you can hear my parrot, by the way. He shares a studio space with me and he likes to make himself known to everyone. And so you can see here how I'm starting to add more of a ridge across the top of the eye, like a brow, I guess. And it just really helps make your creatures pop. I feel like if you don't have the structure there, they just look flat and a bit weird. So it's well worth the time and effort. So now you can see I've sort of jumped ahead a little bit here, otherwise we'd be here all day. But I've added some detailing around the eyes and a different colour around the left hand side of her face. Now I will go into more detail about detailing in another video, so if it is something you want to see me do let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to make another video. Now for the ears, I actually felt myself a piece of fabric from all sorts of different colours that I find within the dog's ear coloration. I cut them into a basic triangle, rough triangle shape and felt them onto place, and you can see when you bend that down it makes a really good floppy ear, which is what we're looking for. Obviously it looks very large right now, but it's much easier to start big and trim to shape accordingly rather than trying to make it too small and realising you've got to start it all over again. So with all of my sculptures, I always try and get the head done first, 'cause it's a really good way to making sure the body proportions are okay. So you can see we've got our base armature here with the wool wrapped around, and I just start adding quite large sections of wool into the body, and I start really bulking it out. Now again, as with the head, it's really important that you felt this really firmly, because if you don't, you're going to have a floppy sculpture, and nobody wants that. So keep at it, keep filling in proportions, and always check back with your pictures, because it's amazing how you sort of go off on a tangent, as it were, and you start adding bulk or taking away where it's not needed. So you can see here how the sculpture slowly builds up. I've got a bit more muscle tone on the legs as well. And just keep going, keep checking, have a good look, make sure it looks okay. And almost, it kind of just suddenly starts to appear, that character and that little dog that you've had so many photos sent of suddenly starts to work. So you can add more details in and everything else. And there we go, Pogo's all finished. So if you enjoyed that video, please give me a like, subscribe if you want to, and I'll be sure to get you more felting videos very soon. Thanks for watching.